Hey Leon, what up though? Yeah. Joe.
Hi, this is Dr. P.
And this is Craig Scott.
And welcome to Beyond the Divide.
So today we're going to talk about what I call virtue versus results. Does the moral high ground of a movement matter in comparison to the moral state of its leaders? So we're going to talk about, the personal lives of leaders is irrelevant to the overall movement and all that sort of stuff. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. This past the municipal elections that were held here in North Carolina and New York. Woo! Listen, I'm a registered Republican, proud and all of that. But the Republicans, we had our behinds handed to us in this election, and we got to talk about it.
Yeah. So a lot of Democrats across the country were elected, a lot of women. How are you feeling about it? Because I think that with everything going on with this current presidential administration, I think that people are, in the mood for something different, especially and I think we actually talked about this last episode, but SNAP benefits are in trouble now. People are looking for something drastically different. But I want to know, because I feel like you're even more in depth with this knowledge than I am. What do you feel like the reason for some of the changes and shifts here with these past elections were?
Well, as far as what happened with Ma'am Downey, that's a very hard name for me to say, Ma'am Downey, who the Republicans like to call the communists and democratic socialists and all that sort of stuff. But in fact, the Republican Party basically handed him the election. Now, and I feel the same thing happened here in North Carolina as well. And the reason why is there's just an aversion on the part of the Republican leadership on the local and state level to incorporate new messaging, pick better candidates, and spend the damn money on supporting candidates that are really viable. So looking at what happened in New York with Mandani, forgive me, Mandani, if you listen to most of the people who they spoke to after the election, they were always saying the same thing. He's a new face and he was saying something new. Oh my God, guess what? That's how Donald Trump became the president twice. But the Republican Party leadership, especially the establishment leadership on the state and local level, it's not trickling down to them. Like, they're not getting it. They're doing the same thing. They're picking the same kind of hand-picked candidates with the same message. The Virginia governor's race.
Oh, yep.
Same thing. So, in my opinion, we basically just handed that stuff to.
So if you were in charge of political strategy, what would that have looked like for you? What would the new messaging have been? What would you have encouraged candidates to do if it was all under your leadership?
If it was all under my leadership, let's talk about a guest that we had recently that we interviewed, Carla Franklin Richards, right? Mm-hmm. She's not a Republican. Okay, she's not a Republican. However, she's about as conservative as you can get as for an unaffiliated votes. I don't think it's wise to not support a candidate who's not in your party, but they are basically in the same political vein as yours. Like, listen, you've got to come out and support that person in that candidacy. That's one of the things I would have done is done that. And two, I would have done a better job at picking candidates who are going to incorporate new messaging, new ideas. Richard Beard, we were pushing for Richard Beard. There was this whole thing where they were writing, racist on his signs out in people's yards and all that sort of stuff. And he came out and, talked about how terrible it was and all that sort of stuff. However, we reached out, hey, listen, come on the Black podcast, have some Black folks interview you.
All right.
He doesn't show up. Like, I've got to call that out. Like, how do you not take advantage of that and then wonder why you get trounced? You know what I'm saying? And listen, I got to give our props to our other guests we had.
Urban Allen. Hey, congratulations, my boy. Yeah.
He pulled it off. and to give Beyond the Divide, some props too. Carla Franklin Richards, she lost her election by 53 points. Both of them were on Beyond the Divide. So we're going to take credit for this going on. So if you want to be competitive in these races, come and talk with Beyond the Divide.
Yeah. I think to your point about the Richard guy, showing up and being able to have those conversations on different platforms, it does a lot. And I won't go into detail about it, but I think even with other political candidates, when you're looking back on it, some of them didn't go to all the different platforms. And of course, you have your, no pun intended, your politics around why you go on certain platforms, what could be the outcome for your campaign if you do. But sometimes showing up and showing your face is the real thing. When we talk about these different the policies and the new messaging, what would be the new messaging? Because you talk about that strategy, but like if everything was under your control, what is the new message that the American public needs?
The new messaging, especially coming from the Republican Party side. Listen, we've got to ask this uncomfortable question. Donald Trump did a great job with the terrorists, accumulated a whole bunch of money, went to the Treasury. How is that trickling down to regular, everyday working class people? Republicans have to ask that question. Because that had a lot to do with the lack of enthusiasm coming from the Republican side. I was having a conversation with someone as well. A lot of what happened, especially here in North Carolina, and I think this is happening in many of the states that were having these elections, the Republican Party members didn't show up.
Yeah.
They didn't come. They didn't vote. because I believe they are frustrated with the same thing. Like they are. Give them a new face. Give them a new message. Mm-hmm. They aren't buying the same dried up, washed up, safe messaging that too many local candidates have become comfortable with doing.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point about going on certain podcasts, remember Donald Trump went and interviewed with people in podcasts that you would never think he would sit down with, but he did it. So on one hand, you have Republicans who are going to praise Donald Trump, but they don't want to utilize any of the tactics, any of the messaging, any of the things that he used in order to become the president, in two different elections. So it's, I think it's just a combination of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think with someone like Trump, there's like Democrats, there's Republicans, and then there are Trump supporters. And that's a completely different, I think he's built a brand around himself versus just he's like a brand that happens to be associated with the Republicans at this point. I think that's important because if you're looking at Republicans, you're looking at maybe traditional methods, maybe in the past for other elections, they don't do the Donald Trump approach and it's all worked out. But we're living in a new society, right? Mandani, I didn't know how young he was, but I'm seeing him in clubs after the celebration, and you're seeing how young he is. You're seeing the music he's gravitating to, all the people he's willing to go out and be a part of and touch in their communities and society. And it goes back to your point. New messaging, you need something drastic. And in this society, when the problems are super, super drastic and people are hurting, millions of people are about to be without their SNAP benefits potentially. And so you got to have something different than before. But a question that I have too is, as we're looking at these different political leaders, there are a lot of possible political scandals that could come out. And I want to talk to you about just leadership in general and how should we judge leaders based on their life on the side, right? And how much of that should, take precedent in how we view them as our leaders?
Listen, because, thinking about the subject, and I'm just going to tell you where I'm coming from. The only people that have a dilemma with that type of subject are Black American voters. We're the only people that are on, what is he doing in his bedroom? What did he do? Listen. Every other group, when it comes to business leaders and political leaders, they're only concerned with one thing. What are the results that leader has produced? They don't listen. They'll give lip service to it, but they are not going to vote according to, he cheated on his wife. He grabbed a woman by the P word. Come on, bro. They are showing you that they don't care about that. So that is something that is an unfortunate reality of the Black American culture, where we are just putting too much emphasis on people's personal moral standing. If you're talking about a religious leader whom you are expecting to sort of, set an example in his personal life that is consistent with the morals that he's preaching, or, whether at the mosque or at the church, then I get it. But when we're talking about voting for senators and congressmen and presidents, that stuff is irrelevant. And it just frustrates me so much to see Black Americans so easily manipulated with other things that have nothing to do with the actual tangible results that these political leaders are producing.
Touche. So I definitely understand that perspective. I guess for me, what I try to figure out is for example, if a principal at a school was running a school really, really well, but you found out he had a very, very troubling past with minors, it would be like, okay, well, do you care how successful he's running the school that a child might be at? Or do you sort of care about his moral happenings? And so I think context is very, very important. So let's talk about the Epstein files. So if the Epstein files come out and Trump is associated with them in a negative way, what would you tell to the American public if you were his publicist? Let's say it's something that's really, really bad that has to do with minors. How do you say, okay, he's doing, well, let's pretend he's doing a great job. Like, let's say the American public thinks that. If the Epstein files come out, what would you say to that?
What I would say to that is, prior to something like that coming out, he's already got a whole bunch of other stuff that people are looking at as, it's questioning his moral fabric and all that sort of stuff. So, because you're giving me a very extreme example to deal with. So let's just first deal with that.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is that in face of the moral issues that he had prior to this, the voters didn't care about that because they were more concerned with what the results were that he would get. Now, when you are getting into extreme issues like that,
right,
then of course you're talking about it's going to change the entire narrative, because that's what's happening in the mega movement right now. Because of his mishandling of the Epstein files, he's lost a lot of support among his own followers, which flies in the face of this accusation that he's the king and it's a cult and all this sort of stuff. Because in cults, you don't ever question there's a fearless leader. But when he had that misstep with the Epstein files, it's showing. And I think even these elections have been tainted by it as well. So outside of the extreme stuff,
right,
who he's slept with, and that stuff is just not, this is just not relevant.
No, and I definitely understand that part too. I think we do have to look at it level and context and nuance. I remember first time I found out about someone like MLK, for example, right? And his infidelities and how the government used those infidelities to attack his family, especially Coretta, right? So, but once again, you're looking at a political leader who is also a religious leader, who is also, so it was multiple hats that he was wearing. And so I think that when you look back at legacy and things of that nature, I think that people are pretty much still, hey, we love MLK. We love what he's done. So do you think that when someone is alive and they are in their political position, that they get a lot more flack for their infidelities, and then over time people can look back and say, oh, well, he did or she did accomplish X, Y, and Z, so we forgive them? Or do you feel like there's that stain is always there? Because I feel like with MLK, people sort of know about it, but I knew about MLK since I was like 4 or 5 years old. I didn't know about the infidelities for another 10, 15 years. So, how do you feel like the scandals go over time?
First of all, let's just talk about MLK. And one person single-handedly within the Black community made it popular to start dogging MLK about his personal life. B. Simone, the Black comedian, she's the one that really kicked that whole thing off. And what was terrible about it was she didn't qualify it like you're qualifying. She didn't say, oh, well, he's a great person. He did great, great accomplishments, all that. No, she said all of that stuff is irrelevant, erased, and doesn't matter because he was cheating on his wife. So that's a lot different than the position that that you're taking. So I have an issue, especially with any Black Americans who are trying to make a big issue out of this man's personal life.
Right.
When you are sitting here benefiting from everything that this man has done. So I'm not in that camp.
Right.
Listen, he who is without sin, throw the first stone. I'm with that all, across the board. Because in any of these people can have a whole bunch of dirt in their closets that could come out, against them. So I don't like the idea of we're going to negate everything positive that this leader has done because of some personal situations that his family and his wife was able to reconcile about, which is the only relevant thing.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? So no, I'm not a conservative that's going to do that.
Yeah, I think my issue with Black people has been less on the political side of like judging someone's character. I think that as someone who like loves, Black entertainment media and stuff like that, I think that some of us are too forgiving to our entertainers. So, but once again, I get more upset with the Black folks who still support entertainers who do the extreme side of things that we were talking about earlier, right? So the P. Diddy's, the R. Kelly's of the world, I do think there's a conversation, right? Yeah. So I think that when you're looking at political leaders like the Martins or the Malcolms or, people like that, I think their mistakes are things you can learn from, not necessarily something that should erase their work. So it's like, hey, if I'm a political activist, I should go in knowing, hey, there might be a lot of temptation. Even MLK had some issues with it. How do I, prepare myself not to go through that or set up parameters? I don't think it should be, hey, he cheated on his wife. And no matter how much turmoil that might have caused for their family, to your point, that's their personal business. And did Dr. King accomplish the things that he set out to do? Did he make a lot of stride and progress? And if so, and since so, how do we say, hey, look, that's not something that we like, but at the same time, this is all the stuff that they did. And now how do we prepare the next, generation of leaders to maybe, not go through those pitfalls if possible? And I think that's the conversation. What can you learn from someone like MLK? But I do have an issue with how we take some of the people who do the extreme harm to our own communities and still say, still love them. I'm still going to make grace for them. That's where my heart is. I don't have it. Right. I don't have it for certain things. I can understand a lot of crimes, but anything that's having to do with any type of sexual offenses, for example, I just don't. And I think that's where I see us being too forgiving. I haven't seen it as much with our political leaders and us that's stopping us there. But I do think there's a conversation of anyone that we idolize, anyone that we celebrate. What is the farthest amount of harm they can do, especially to people in our own community, before we say, hey, we can't do this anymore, right.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm across the board because the R. Kelly, the P. Diddy, the Bill Cosby, to me, those were all political operations. Mm-hmm. I'm not buying that it's only the Black guys in the entertainment business that are doing these sexually related offenses. I'm not buying it. Mm-hmm. So if the white guys who are really running the entertainment industry aren't being indicted, aren't being put on trial, aren't being sentenced and put in jail, then yeah, if they get a pass, then ours ought to get a pass too. That's my feeling about it.
Okay.
Guilt and innocence and at this point isn't relevant when all this is another disguised COINTEL program to discredit Black leaders. That's all it was for.
So my question too then becomes, when I look at someone like Bill Cosby or the R. Kellys or the P. Diddy's of the world, I would also say there are a lot of other Black leaders who are in entertainment. Like we haven't heard anything about Stevie Wonder. We haven't heard about things. And someone like John Legend, for example, right, who is a little bit more political, who might stand for more causes more publicly, they haven't attacked him. And so I think to your point about across the board, I do agree that I think it's not just the Black man thing. And I think that's where we have to be very, very careful, right?
And we got to push back. So give me the white guys that have been on the news 24/7 about sexually related offenses that they're going to trial for. Give me the list.
So if we're thinking about someone like Weinstein, if we're thinking about who's that? So
that's all you get. So you get one token white guy. So Weinstein, and that's it.
So, but here's the question, right? So, first of all, let's go back to the point of if they get a pass, we should get a pass. So, are you saying that if, let's say there is a world where they are hurting, white men are hurting children, they're hurting women, they're hurting other men, and they're getting a pass for whatever reason in the legal system, would you want to live in a world where Black men are also in your families, at your churches, and your communities, and they are not being held accountable?
In an ideal utopian world, of course not. In an ideal utopian world, of course not. But this is the political reality that we are in.
Mm-hmm.
The political reality is this. If the law doesn't apply to everybody, then it doesn't apply to anybody. That supersedes everything else for me. Listen, if this legal system is only to be used against Black men when they do these atrocious things, then what kind of legal system do we have?
And I would
that's where I'm.
And I do understand that, because obviously Black men are targeted more in these situations, and we know the stories of Black men being falsely accused of things of that nature. But I would also say that, like, if you're R. Kelly and you're going to these high schools right across the street from the McDonald's to like recruit like minors, maybe you shouldn't be doing that either, and don't put yourself in that position. Now, it's not good when little Johnny, who's in Beverly Hills, does it either. I guess the conversation though still becomes, if a Black man goes to jail for something that he did do, right? Because I'm going with you where it is across the board. I think Black men are doing horrible things, white men are doing horrible things, Latinx men are doing horrible things. Everybody's doing horrible things. In our communities, though, when it's our Black boys, our Black girls, our Black women, our Black men, and we have predators in our community who are doing these types of things. We're not talking about infidelity. We're not talking about theft. We're not even talking about murder. We're talking about sexual crimes that are hurting people in that way. I feel better in a world where that is being addressed. Just like I would feel great if in the white community it was addressed. But if we have a chance to catch a predator in our own communities, I can't be mad at that, because at the end of the day, if you are a Black man and you're doing it, I don't have the sympathy for you is out the window versus, oh, you were falsely accused, right? And so I think that we have to like leave space for that. And when a white person is accused of it, if we do believe that they did it, it's also on us as a community to share that too and make that viral too, just like we would make an R. Kelly thing viral or a Diddy thing viral. But I also think that there has to be that space where the law might not get everybody, but I'm not talking about a Black man who might have needed to go get some food for his family, had to do what he had to do. Mm-hmm. We talking about if Diddy was doing some of the stuff, or not Diddy, I won't put it on Diddy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, how did Diddy get in the same vein as Epstein? All of his so-called victims were all over the age of consent, and really they were co-defendants. They really should have been co-conspirators. But yet he gets thrown into the Epstein pot.
And I will say with Diddy, there are some stories that are not put in the light. So I would encourage anyone watching this to go watch the Day 26 interview on Black television. I would encourage it and look at.
That's what I mean. Is like I'm not going to allow my emotions to be manipulated to that degree. Everybody knows that anything dealing with children or people underage, it's a totally sensitive subject,
right?
Very emotional subject,
right?
But I am not going to allow you to manipulate and exploit me with that. When I can clearly see you are using that as a political tactic, and you're only targeting prominent Black men. The entire Me Too movement has always and only been about indicting and incarcerating them. When it comes to the one guy that you had that actually could implicate in that type of arena, he dies in custody and doesn't see a courtroom. And we're supposed to just kind of, go along with that. No, it's deliberate. Only they get prosecuted for that. We are not going to prosecute ourselves for that. And I'm not going to excuse that because it's an emotional subject.
Can it be a both and thing then? So, hey, all these white people who are doing these bad things, can it not be a thing where let's continue to put the light on that as a community, like we were talking about before? We build our own systems because we're not trusting things that are going on. People are voting drastically different than they ever had because they know that what they're being spewed is not actually, it's not yielding results. And so is there a world where we can look at some of these things and say, okay, our Black leaders are being called out, but if it looks like our Black leaders did it, we got to hold them accountable. But we're going to use all that power that we have as a community to keep the light, not just put the light, but keep the light on the Weinsteins and all the other white entertainers who are doing the same thing. I mean, is there a world where we can do that?
That's good. But we're talking about the actual government system, the government mechanism. That's what I'm talking about.
Got it.
When we're talking about the actual government is deciding we are only going to focus and talk. Listen, even white Americans are frustrated with this. This is what half of the mega party is upset about the Epstein thing about, because they are sick of that narrative. Oh, only the black guys are doing this stuff? They are sick of it. So that's what I mean by, that's what I'm talking about, is what the government and people in the government are doing in that area.
Got it. Yeah, and it's weird for me because it's like, if we're putting all the light on the black men, and I don't believe that the black men did it, like Ryan Coogler, for example, he couldn't like make a deposit. They thought he was robbing the bank. He wasn't robbing the bank.
Right.
A clearly innocent person who is making strides in entertainment, in black entertainment, all of a sudden you feel like he's robbing a bank. That's where a conspiracy could come into play for me. I think that when it comes to, and we're just talking about the most extreme examples, of course, right? But I'm like, if you're a black leader and like you're doing it, like, and think about it like this. If you know the government is on you, right? I'm not saying it's fair, but you should be in a space where, and we're not talking about infidelity, we're not talking about thief, but you should be in a place where your morals are in such a place where I know I'm being targeted. I know every second, if you're dead and you didn't do it, how do you even find yourself in a position where the government can put something on you in the first place that sticks, right? And so I think we also have to watch that too.
I think like that standard that you're putting goes back to the virtue versus result thing. And that's what I'm talking about as far as Black American culture. We are more tuned to negate everything else because of those type of immoral acts. And I don't think that that's wise. It's just not wise. And that's my reason for just not, going along.
No. And touche. But you would say that for the less serious things.
Listen, I would say it across the board. If the law isn't going to be applied to everybody, then it doesn't get applied to you.
That's okay. Yeah,
that's what.
I definitely understand. I think going back to we talked about this last episode. Like we're talking about this situation of urgency, and so I think that if you are a predator, and once again, still extreme case scenarios, I do believe, because the law's not going to catch anybody all the time anyway. So I do think that there has to be a space of, if you're doing something bad in the community and someone catches it, because I think that's where the Black community suffers. We know what's going on in our own communities, and sometimes we're afraid to put something out there. But I think when you're talking about the government and political structures, I think there's room to say, all right, the government isn't going to put the spotlight on these folks outside in this community. Black people are the best of making anything go viral, of putting attention on anything and keeping that in there. So I do tend to agree there has to be a way in which we can keep the spotlight on those that we also feel like we need to be prosecuted. But I do think that anyone we find, because my conversation, I love Black people collectively. Black people individually, it's a different thing. If you're, and what I mean by that is, I want the whole of us to be successful. I want the whole of us to have financial, spiritual, mental wisdom. But a person by person basis, just because you look like me doesn't mean you represent what I represent. Doesn't mean we have the same morals. And as we always continue to talk about, the extreme morals of me, right? So we don't have to agree on everything. But if you are a bad person, don't care what you look like. Don't care what the law, what goes on with the law if you're actually doing the bad things. I've been in situations where I saw people who were literally doing heinous things or about to do heinous things, and I took measures based off that. You being Black doesn't do it for me, and so I think that when it comes to our own communities, like if you're a political leader and you have a really, really bad reputation of harassing women, like there has to be something where it's like, okay,
let's say I'm a political leader,
right,
who has a reputation of harassing women, but under my leadership, unemployment is going down. Entrepreneurship is going up. Jobs is going, like I'm doing a fabulous job as a political leader.
Mhm.
Should that matter? Should me harassing just women, which is wrong, I'm not going to say that it isn't, but in the political realm, should it matter?
It, yeah.
That's
It should.
Black America
It should.
going wrong, in my opinion.
No, and I get that. I just think that when you're thinking about the morals of it, because you also got to understand, one, especially in this media day, right? And I actually love that we're talking about this because we're talking about government maybe using media and other sources to push narratives out about Black men, right? So if you have a reputation for harassing women constantly and it's not being checked, right? What happens when you harass the wrong person and now it's all up in the media? And now the forces that be who hate what you're doing in your community because you're making all this progress, now they got something to use against you. So now, but that's a secondary point. I just think that if you're harassing human beings, you probably shouldn't be in a figure of leadership. If I was in that situation, I had all the power in the world, I would say, hey, look, you're going to have to address that behavior and change it, or you can maybe be a shadow leader, but we're not going to have someone. We can take your input in your mind and stuff, but we're not going to have someone who's going to be,
where you are coming from.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I don't misunderstand it.
Right.
I don't agree with it.
No,
I do not think that in the realm of business and politics, that is a wise or intelligent standard to use, because there's not. What is the likelihood of you finding persons whom there is just nothing wrong with their background? It's highly unlikely. And so, because I want to be able to kind of bring us to the next subject that we were talking about, and that is when strategy is immoral but effective. Do we go along with the strategy, or do we denounce the strategy because it's quote unquote immoral?
It depends on what the strategy is. It depends on what the strategy is.
That's what I'm talking about.
But it should.
In a general sense, this is what when we're talking about politics, when we're talking about business, as a general principle, the results are the only things that matter. Did this strategy produce the result that we were looking for? And thus, we've got to take the bad with the good. But we don't throw the good out because of the bad that we don't like. But in the Black American community, our priority is on the intangible. That's what we're describing. These are intangibles. Immorality, or he did this wrong. Wait, hold on. If his job is to produce jobs for us, is to make sure that we have good housing and all that stuff, well, that's what we've got to judge this guy. What he's doing in his personal life and who felt harassed by him, we cannot allow that to be the determining factor for, we're going to negate everything that he's done in his professional life.
No, and I understand that. So now we get to this point of what you said before. If it applies to one person, it should apply to everybody. So now if you have a leader who they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but now there are groups and there are people who are being harmed disproportionately. Well, now it goes back to, well, if the law should apply to everybody, and shouldn't the progress apply to everybody? If we are accomplishing all these goals because of this leader, but someone is being disproportionately harmed, I think we have to look at that. And because we're not, and let's take it off the extreme examples, because I think Black people do judge based off that. And I do think that in extreme examples, people should be judged. Do you feel like there have been a lot of instances where Black people have said, oh, you cheated on your wife or your partner, so now we are not going to vote for you anymore? Because I want to get us to like those medium examples. Because I do believe that most people are okay with a little bit of sour if most of it is sweet. It just depends on what category the sour is in. And that's the real thing. So when you talk about that, what examples are you thinking about that are like less extreme where the Black community has been like, oh, you weren't super moral, so we're tossing you to the side when you were clearly showing that you were making progress for our community?
All right. The MLK example. This is what they're doing. They are literally, you go on YouTube, this is the thing now. As if MLK was just a terrible person. They are literally doing this to every Black legendary leader that we have on YouTube and social media. It's like the fad now. Oh, they were communists. Oh, they were Satanists. It's just ridiculous. And all of it predicated on, these little personal, what they call picadillos or what have you. So yeah, they're doing this stuff all the time with regard to our past leaders. When it comes to the leaders that are being put up today, I mean, what's come out?
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? In other words, okay, Cory Booker, have they put any trash out on him? Any dirt out on him? No. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, but they know, and this is another reason why they can so easily manipulate our Black leaders, because they know that the Black community, as soon as they put just any little thing out on our leaders, we are going to throw the guy to the wolves, and we got to stop.
Yeah. So I love that. And so with the Cory Booker, I appreciate you bringing up the Cory Booker example, because it seems like he sort of talks against a lot of things that maybe the government at least this administration might support. And maybe you think differently, but I'm thinking to myself,
he sucks about things that Trump doesn't agree with, but for the prior to Trump, listen, he's on cool.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like Cory Booker is one of those Black men who are protected?
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. Why do you think we keep? Listen, what's the sister out in California? She's still in office. Oh, I forget her name. But like, these people are in these offices like perpetually. So you're not getting back in these offices constantly unless you are towing the line.
So when we're talking about Black men with certain agendas, so there's no reason to attack Cory Booker in the political space, who could like ruffle some feathers, but then there is reason to attack like a Diddy or R. Kelly or like a Bill Cosby, or.
No, what I'm saying is Cory Booker could be doing something far worse than P. Diddy, but we're not going to find out about it because he's serving the interests of the establishment. This is why I'm saying that this whole exposing this is a tactic. This is a political tactic. COINTELPRO, that's all this is. The guys who are doing what they want to do, saying what they want to say, you're not going to hear about their affairs and all. No. Why? Because it doesn't serve the powers that be, that doesn't serve their interests. We know the people that the power structure doesn't like. They're going to bring out all their dirt. Trump, for instance. They're going to bring out all of your dirt. Whenever you go against the particular order, one sign is it, they're going to bring up all your personal dirt. So show me a Black liberal Democrat leader who, look, they did my man Gillum like that in Florida. Yeah. Now keep that. Here's a brother who came this close to becoming the governor of Florida. And he was so impressive that people were like, man, he could run for president. But for some reason, the Democrats didn't want that brother to run for president. So now they come out and expose him for LGBTQ activity. And then they use that as the justification for telling him to get out of politics when the Democrat Party is supposed to be the pro-LGBTQ party. What's going on? See, listen, it's a tactic. It's literally just a political tactic. And I'm not going to allow my emotions to be manipulated in order to fall into that. Right. So one of the historical examples of this thing about strategy and whether or not it's something that, we should tolerate if it's asking us to do something that we would normally be against is famous case Booker T. Washington. The Atlanta Compromise speech. What year was that? That was 1895. He gave the speech laying out in essence, listen, we've got to focus more on skilled labor, getting our skills up to be able to build and basically, provide for ourselves. And if we've got to, put the other stuff on the back burner, so be it. He, to this day, is crucified for taking that position. But yet, the strategy worked, or would have worked if we had actually followed. to the point, all the way to the point of this. African-American women, degrees, go to college, the whole 9 yards. But Black men are still out earning them because of their skilled labor. So isn't this an example of, actually that strategy would have worked. It would have, just imagine had we followed Booker T's model as opposed to Du Bois' model, where we would be today. So that's an example of what I'm talking about, a strategy that we necessarily might not like, but it probably would actually work.
So when you talk about, I want to go back to Booker T stuff. So when you're saying put the skilled labor on the forefront, what do you mean when you say put the other stuff to the back burner? Because that would be maybe where the criticism of Washington would come in.
Right. In other words, the other stuff is, and this is how I put it, we need white America to prove to us that they like us. We need them to be polite to us. We need them to not use certain words when they're referring to. We need to be able to sit in a restaurant with them. We need to be that stuff. That's the type of stuff that Booker was not so much, Booker T. Washington was not so much, he didn't think that was a priority. The integration stuff, he just didn't think it was a priority. Listen, we are just getting off the plantation. We need to learn how to build bricks, buildings, and make diapers, like basic stuff. And to a point that a brother was making earlier about where we would be at if we could actually control just a single industry in America. Well, Booker T. Washington's model would have produced that for us. So that's what.
Yeah, no, and I think that what you'll see too is even with the Du Bois model, let's say that everything that we've gotten from that time up to now is because people went more with Du Bois, right? I think it's complicated because I think that to say we shouldn't be doing one thing and we should only be focused on skilled labor is, I don't think there's a lot of nuance in that, or vice versa. We need to figure out how to shake up the system and forget all about skilled labor. I think there has to be room for both, first of all. And then I also think that some of the Du Boisian stuff did work, but like we've talked about before, our communities have been destroyed all the time.
This percentage of the community.
Because the question becomes for me, like, when we're talking about what would have happened had this not happened, well, what would have happened to any of our communities and societies that weren't, burned down or drowned? So I think that, and then even when you're talking about skilled labor now, I think if you're talking about your government point again, I think just like someone can go burn down a town and whatever, people will use COINTELPRO. I think no matter which pathway we went, if we would have had all the skilled workers in the world, or everyone would have just been an intellectual, whatever, I think the government was still going to have some type of strategy and they would have revamped.
But with all of that being said, we've followed a certain path. Du Bois, personally, because he had a better propaganda machine behind him than Booker T. Washington. We followed that. We followed that for decades. Now let's look at the results. If the results are dismal, and they are, we've got to at some point say, this probably wasn't the best way to go. Was there an alternative being proposed? Yes, it was being proposed by Booker T. Washington. So I do agree that there should have been both. It absolutely should have been both. But the reality is that for decades, we suppressed one and we glamorized and pushed the other, and the results are just not there.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the dichotomy between the Washington and the Du Bois, because once again, I just do really feel like no matter what the structure would have been, I think there would have been a revamping and there would have been a strategy to adjust. And now I think, going back to your point, from the last episode, all right, if you do feel like we went the Du Boisian way and that wasn't helpful, and we could go back and forth about like why was it and whatever, but what do you say to Black Americans today? You say, I want to embrace a different style. I want to go a different way. I want to lock into a different style of being and trying to produce economically and financially.
That's the way to go. That's where I was opening about why the Republicans got their butts handed to them. New messaging has to be out there. And that new messaging has to be willing to challenge the old stuff that everybody accepted as, oh, this is the way, this is the proper way. No, we've got to be able to come out and say, no, that wasn't good. That didn't work. So yeah, let's try something new. Man, Donnie, that's his whole key to victory. Hey, this old stuff isn't working. So let's try something new. And people are more than open to it. That's how desperate we are right now. We'll be up for anything. But you have to have the gumption to be able to stand up and say something different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you could leave the public with one thing in terms of messaging that we need to do to move forward as a country, especially like we talked about earlier, a lot of people are about to be struggling or are struggling right now with the SNAP benefits. What would you say the next step for our society is?
I think the next step for America is we definitely have to revamp this whole concept of trickle down. It doesn't work. I know that the Republicans love Reagan and they love Bush. The trickle down thing doesn't, and everybody knows it. But it's clear now. It just doesn't.
Right.
So we've got to start looking into a bottom-up economic approach that's going to work for a broader segment of the society. That's just the overall for America. For Black America, we have got to be open to new ways of thinking. We just have to, because the trajectory that we're following now, there's nothing positive in the future for us. It just is, unless we open ourselves up to something different. Yeah,
I love what you said about the trickle down not being an effective practice. And you are probably the first Republican that I've actually heard say or be against the trickle down, which I really, really appreciate. And I will say, to your point about America, I think, there's nothing for us to lose at this point. So I feel like being open to new anything and everything, let's start throwing stuff at the wall. But I think to your point, going back to the morality point, I think Black people really have to make some very, very heavy decisions about, hey, if someone is effective in their role, is there a way to hold someone accountable without the erasure, right? What's the accountability versus erasure, and how do we deal with that as a community, right? Because obviously some things, hey, maybe we need to distance ourselves from you, but some things are, hey, you cheated on your wife. That is not the best thing in the world, but hey, we're gonna give you the resources and support to figure that out. How are you doing with this thing that is impacting all of us, right? And I think that there's, to your point, especially with someone like Dr. King, it's like there is that line between we got to hold you accountable versus we're going to erase you from everything and tarnish your legacy. So, yeah.
Well, we went in today. I hope y'all enjoyed this segment.
This has been Beyond the Divide.
Watch what you do, cause it's coming back 10